So many of us want the absolute best for our pets. And for a lot of people, that means feeding them a raw food diet. I mean, it seems simple, right? Let's get them back to what they would eat in the wild. But what if the raw food you're buying isn't actually raw at all? Today, we're going to dig in and investigate how modern processing is changing the very nature of so-called raw pet food. And this gets right to the heart of it. We see these labels, natural, biologically appropriate, and we trust them. We just assume they've got to be true to be printed on the bag. But what if that trust is, well, misplaced? The gap between what the marketing promises and what's actually happening in the factory can be absolutely massive. So, what's really going on behind the scenes? Well, it turns out many of these foods go through this gauntlet of industrial processes, things you would never, ever associate with the word raw. And these steps, they don't just preserve the food, they fundamentally alter it on a biological level. All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll tackle the raw illusion. Then, we'll go behind the label. After that, we'll look at the nutritional toll, the price for pets, and finally, we'll ask the big question, what is truly raw? Okay, first up, the raw illusion. This is all about what they tell you versus what they actually do. And here it is, the huge disconnect. The marketing promises you this beautiful, natural, wholesome meal. But the reality? It involves a whole series of heavy-duty industrial interventions that completely transform the ingredients long before they ever get near your pet's bowl. So next, let's pull back the curtain and go behind the label to see what this modern raw assembly line actually looks like. You see, it's usually not just one thing. It's a whole series of processes. We're talking fine grinding, irradiation, high-pressure processing, multiple freeze-thaw cycles, and long-term storage. Each step just layers on more change, moving the food further and further away from its original natural state. Okay, let's zoom in on one of these. High-pressure processing, or HPP. Imagine squeezing something with just immense force. Now, even though there's no heat involved, this crazy amount of pressure is enough to change the very structure of proteins, that's called denaturing, and it totally inactivates the food's own natural, helpful digestive enzymes. So get this. Even without being cooked, the food starts acting metabolically more like lightly cooked meat. Kind of defeats the purpose, right? Now for the nutritional toll. Let's look at exactly what gets stripped away by all these processes. Irradiation is another big one, and it's mostly used for safety. You've got gamma rays, which go deep but can destroy a lot of vitamins. E-beams don't go as deep, but they cause a ton of surface damage, which is a huge problem for ground meats. And here's a little marketing trick you gotta watch out for. You might see this deceptively labeled as cold sterilization. And get this, here's something that's almost impossible for a consumer to know about, something called dose stacking. An ingredient, say some imported meat, might get irradiated. Then it gets mixed into a batch. And then the final product might get irradiated again. This piling on of damage is just incredibly destructive to the nutrients. And there's no rule that says companies have to tell you what's happening. Just look at this number, up to 80%. That's how much vitamin E can be totally wiped out by irradiation. And why is that a huge deal? Well, vitamin E is a vital antioxidant. Without it, all those healthy polyunsaturated fats can oxidize, which basically means they go rancid. It also damages vitamins A and some B vitamins. That's a massive nutritional blow from just one step. Then you've got acidification. Think about how lime juice cooks fish when you make ceviche. Well, it's pretty much the same idea here. Acids are used to denature proteins, but this chemical cooking can mess with the availability of crucial amino acids like taurine and lysine, and it can even make the food taste so weird that cats will just turn their noses up at it. Okay, so we've seen the process. Now let's connect the dots to what this actually does to our pets. This is the price for pets, the real-world consequences of all this processing. Now, while these issues are bad for all carnivores, they are especially critical for cats. So why is that? It all comes down to an amino acid called taurine. Unlike dogs, cats literally cannot make their own. They have to get it from their diet, period. The problem is that fine grinding process ruptures all the muscle cells, causing this water-soluble taurine to just leak out and get lost. Plus, cats are constantly losing taurine through their bile. And a deficiency isn't a small thing. We're talking catastrophic health problems, including a really serious heart condition called DCM. And it's not just about taurine. Let's talk about the hard stool problem in kittens. People often blame it on too much bone in the food, But the real culprit is this perfect storm created by processing. You've got proteins denatured by HPP, impaired bile flow, and the loss of natural animal fiber from all that grinding. All that discomfort can even make a kitten start avoiding its food altogether. So, all of this brings us to the big question. What is truly raw? It's time we built a new framework for how we even think about this. This quote just nails it. This is what our source calls the synthetic nutrient con. See, to make up for all the nutrients they've destroyed, manufacturers just throw a bunch of synthetic vitamins and minerals back in. So yeah, on paper, the label might meet the minimum requirements, but it's totally lacking the natural cofactors and the synergy you only get from whole foods. It may look balanced, but biologically, it's a whole different story. And this leads to a pretty profound realization, right? The only processing a truly species-appropriate diet needs is the work done by the animal itself, the act of tearing, chewing, and digesting. That is an essential part of the nutrition. And that's the bottom line. Raw isn't just a marketing term you can slap on a bag. It is a biological state. And once that state is lost through all this industrial processing, you can't just sprinkle some additives in and pretend it's the same. It just isn't. So it leaves us with a really important question. When you're buying food for your pet, are you buying a marketing label or are you buying a biological state?